how much money does it take to start a land center?
Yeah, I mean, that is, they may not ask that question first, but that question is always on the front of their mind. How much does it take to start a land center? And that's, a really broad spectrum depending on what you want to do with your land center. But we always at eBash, we specifically zero in on a $200,000 number. Now, that may seem outrageous to a lot of people, and let me explain a little bit of where we're going with that. But I've seen a lot of land centers over the years start up, and what they do is that they'll have a credit card with a certain limit, or they'll have a 401k plan that they can draw off of, and they'll come in and they'll design their business plan around the fact that they have $75,000, let's say, to start a land center. And so what then they do is that they go out and they start making decisions in their business plan, all building to that $75,000 startup budget. The problem with that is that you cannot, it's not a Subway type of business yet. So you cannot exactly identify, these are all the equipment that are all going to come from these different manufacturers, because month to month prices change in building your own computer or buying your computer and those sort of things. You never know in your local area what it's going to cost to get a sign. Subway, I'm sure, has factories that are, contracted to build a Subway sign that's all the same, so they know exactly how much that's going to cost, for example. But getting into this business, you don't really know your local ordinances and things, what the rules are as far as it takes, so many square feet of the sign can be on the front of your facade of your strip mall or whatever. The other problem that I see is that people don't usually budget enough, so that for two reasons. Number one, to have enough seats in their facility, but then also to get through the first 9 to 18 months of ramp up. And we've just seen that exactly in the last few months of our Indianapolis store we opened, is that, the first year you've got to be able to prepare for the word getting out and people getting to know your center and what you are and what you're about. You cannot expect to open the doors, be cash flow positive from day one. So one of the things that we always say is that you need to have probably 6 to 9 months of cash reserves when you start the business to make sure you get through those times. And then you also have to have enough systems when you start. So your budget to start has to do with, I always use the movie theaters as an example. Movie theaters by over the years have all consolidated into these big megaplexes. There's not very many 1 and 2 screen theaters left. And if you go on a Tuesday night, generally you'll walk into a theater and you'll see, maybe a dozen people in this theater that seats 200 people. And you think, well, what a waste of space and personnel and air conditioning, electricity, and everything. You're doing the same expenses as you would on a Friday night. Well, the key is that on Friday and Saturday nights, you have to maximize your revenue. So if you start with a budget for your land center of $75,000 and work backwards, maybe you can only get 25 stations in your land center. And you think to yourself, we'll just build it as we get busier. Well, I can tell you right now that's never going to happen. And we've seen this over and over again. You're never going to get busier because people come in on a Friday night and only 25 people can be in your store. So if the max you can pull out of a person on a Friday night is $20 and you have a little bit of a rotation, you may be able to max out at $1,000 in sales on a Friday night with 25 stations. You start thinking about that and you start thinking, okay, there's 2 weekends, nights in a month, Friday and Saturday, or in a week, and then you got 4 weeks in a month. There's basically 8 days you can make your most revenue in a given month. Sunday through Thursday, you're just hoping to maybe pay the bills those days, but your money that you're making is on Friday and Saturday. If you don't have enough systems, you don't have enough space, that's the biggest failure that I see in this land center industry is they start small and expect to grow, and it's impossible to grow because people don't have anywhere to sit. So they're in this chicken before the egg type of thing where they're just making enough maybe to just barely get by, and they never make enough to add more systems in or to expand the space to the empty strip mall space next door because they haven't started with that budget high enough. So at eBash, we always say $200,000. That can fluctuate, as low as we've started them for about $125,000, and we've spent as much as $250,000, depending on the city, depending on the space, depending on all the other things. But $200,000 is a pretty good target point to shoot for. If you're under $100,000, unless you're in a space that you can share rent with another place, and there's a lot of other things going on, then chances are under $100,000 you're pretty much just doing it as a hobby and as a charity event, and you're just going to never make that money back.